Good morning, everyone. How y'all doing today? Oh, you know, it's been a good day. It's been a good day. Got up at 4 o'clock again this morning, so had time to make my wife a wonderful little breakfast before she went to work, and took care of some business on the computer and started working on the stream today. And actually, I probably could have used 2 more hours for all the research I wanted to do, but it is what it is. So today is probably going to be a little bit shorter stream than usual because I've got some errands I have to do this afternoon, and I've got to get an early start on them if I'm going to get them done because my day is going to be rather full. Um, I was sitting here this morning though. I was watching. I got on the computer to take care of some business and started watching what started watching some YouTube videos. You know, I learned a lesson. I really need to not watch YouTube at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning. I need to leave the politics alone at 4 o'clock and 4:30 in the morning because by 5 o'clock I was already ticked off and muttering under my breath. And by the time the wife got out of the shower, I had already uh, uttered a few words which I regret in uttering. Good morning, Neil. How you doing today? Uttered a few words which I sort of regret in saying because she overheard me. Well, called some people some names that I really didn't like saying, but that's, well, it is what it is. And I want to jump right in on it here. This guy, Raskin, he is rapidly becoming one of my least favorite people in Washington, D.C. He really and truly is. And all right, you want to cover up your head because you're undergoing chemo treatment and you're losing your hair because of the chemo. Hey, man, dude, I hope you beat the cancer. I really and truly do. But wearing a bandana like that when you're sitting on the house floor, show a little respect, will you please? Show a little bit of respect for your job, and for everything else. All right. So anyway, let's go ahead and start this audio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you, and Mr. McGovern, it's good to see you. I've come to oppose these two resolutions, which we've had no hearings on, that seek to overturn and nullify laws duly enacted by the representatives of the 713,000 citizens who live in Washington, D.C.
Okay. Washington, D.C. Let's remember, we are talking about the national capital here. All right.
You know, the framers of our Constitution observed that Newton's third law of motion acts in politics as well as in physics. Every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. And the people of Washington dared to upset the apple cart in the last two Congresses by challenging their political disenfranchisement.
Their political Washington, D.C., there's been a statehood movement. For Washington, D.C. now for a very long time. Okay? It's been going on for years. It's actually been going on for decades. It's actually as far as back as 1993 when Eleanor Norton Holmes got it voted out of committee, but it's been going on longer than that. But 1993 is one of the times where it actually started. All right.
Complete lockout from voting representation in the U.S. House and the U.S. Senate, and all of the political discrimination that is routinely waged against them. The only community of tax-paying, draftable U.S. citizens who have no voting representation in the Congress of the United States. And now today, they're starting to pay the price, at least if the majority gets its way. Now, Washingtonians have a real and old-fashioned political grievance, the kind of grievance that the framers of our Constitution understood well: disenfranchisement, taxation without representation.
They choose to live in Washington, D.C. I'm going to stop this here for a second. I'm going to stop this here for a second because I want to show this. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the United States Constitution. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such a district not exceeding 10 miles square as may by session of particular states and out of acceptance of Congress become the seat of the government of the United States, and to the exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the same shall be, for the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. The convention was moved. This is because, and right here's the June 21st, 1783, some 80 soldiers, unpaid and weary, marched on Congress sitting in Philadelphia, physically threatened and verbally abused the members, and caused the Congress to flee the city when neither municipal nor state authorities would take actions to protect the members. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Prior to January 6th, there were calls by the Trump administration to increase security. And Nancy Pelosi and the DC mayor refused to do so. Because Trump could not bring in federal troops. Because that is the responsibility of the legislature, of the Congress. Masson wrote, "There's indispensably necessity for complete authority at the seat of the government carries its own evidence with it. Without it, only the public authority might be insulted and its proceedings interrupted with impunity. But the dependence of the members of the general government on the state comprehending the seat of the government for protection and the exercise of their duty might bring on the National Council for imputation of all influence equally dishonorable to the government and dissatisfactory to the other members of the Confederacy." Now remember, Washington, D.C. was a swamp. When it was created as a government. Hey, Green Badger, good morning. Washington, D.C. was a swamp. And that's one of the reasons why we refer to it as a swamp today, because it was and is. But anyway, it is in the Constitution. It would take a constitutional amendment to make D.C. a state. It's not legislative action. It's a constitutional amendment. Congress can't wave their hands and say D.C. is now a state. They can't do it. The states actually have to vote on it. Because it would take an amendment to the Constitution to make it happen. The Democrats they seem to forget that is part of it. They seem to forget that D.C. was intentionally not made a state. Intentionally. That it took land from Maryland and Virginia and other states to create Washington, D.C., not to exceed 10 square miles. If the Democrats were serious about this and wanting to make certain that the people who live in Washington, D.C. got to vote, had representatives in the House and in the Senate, they would cede that everything except for the land that the federal government actually uses back to the individual states. That the Congress can do. The Congress can draw new borders for Washington, D.C. Yeah, why let the little thing like the Constitution get in the way? The Congress could turn around and do this. But this here's what they would rather do. Let's get back here to Raskin. Let's listen to Raskin.
And this is a real grievance, not an imaginary one, like a fictionalized stolen election. and they chose to act to redress their grievance.
Whoops. Got to turn around and talk about a fictionalized stolen election. Got to bring Trump in.
After more than 2 centuries of having no voting voice in Congress,
Which is designed by the Constitution.
having their laws subject to interference by other people's representatives after more than 2 centuries of
Which is designed within the Constitution.
taxation, military service, and conscription without representation in the body that decides on war and everything else at the federal level, the people of Washington simply had enough.
Then they can move out. They can move to Maryland. They can move to Virginia. They can move to another state. They can move across the border.
And it's true that not everyone noticed because they acted nonviolently. Even though they live right nearby, they didn't come and storm the Capitol and beat the daylights out of 150 Capitol
January 6th! January 6th!
police officers, breaking their arms and legs and ribs and jaws and noses, leaving many of them permanently injured
Liar.
and disfigured and traumatized. They didn't try to overthrow the government. They didn't threaten our lives, and they didn't get anyone killed. Indeed, on January 6, 2021, hundreds of Washingtonians serving as Metropolitan Police Department officers or Capitol Police officers and many others defended the Capitol with their bodies and their lives, while out-of-state insurrectionists and coup plotters and cop haters descended on the Capitol to attack us. Washingtonians acted to save the very Congress in which they still have no voting representation at all. You talk about patriotism, that's patriotism. But if they didn't try to violently overthrow the government and install a dictator, what did they do that's gotten everyone in the majority so upset with them that they want to overturn their local laws for the first time in more than 3 decades? Well,
As is authorized by the Constitution.
it's simple. They exercised their rights under the First Amendment, the Ninth Amendment, and the 10th Amendment by speaking, assembling, organizing a statehood constitutional convention, and then submitting a petition for redress of grievances and for admission as a state to the Union.
Which they cannot do as per the Constitution without a constitutional amendment. Come on, Raskin, you're supposed to be an expert on the Constitution, or so you have claimed. So you have claimed many times. He's undergoing chemo treatment for cancer. So he's wearing the rag for to cover his baldness, his loss of hair.
They did what 37 states have done successfully before them.
Following the Constitution.
They tried to get Congress to use our powers under Article 4 to end their second-class status and disenfranchisement by admitting them on an equal footing with the original 13 states.
And requiring an amendment to Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution.
And this is apparently what has set the majority off. In the last 2 Congresses, in 2020 and 2021, the House voted to approve Washington's petition for admission to the Union as a state, bringing Washington that much closer to the plane of equality in the Union. DC statehood did not make it through the Senate in either case, but that provisional defeat for the people of Washington is apparently not enough for the new majority, which shrewdly understands that most statehood drives take many years and that DC statehood is picking up a lot of momentum. So the new majority has been
only because people like you are lying as to what it would take to make DC a state and as to why DC is not a state. Because you are lying to the people.
constructed with votes of a lot of MAGA members, like Representative Green, who told us in the Oversight Committee the other day that the major civil rights issue she sees in Washington today is the discriminatory mistreatment, not of Washingtonians, but of MAGA insurrectionists who are in jail.
MAGA insurrectionists who have been in jail on the simple charges of trespass for over 2 years. Okay. Yeah, I would say that's a major civil rights violation. Okay. No trial, no bond, sitting in jail, some in solitary confinement, some without proper medical treatment for over 2 years. Yeah, that is a civil rights violation.
For assaulting officers, interfering with a federal proceeding, and engaging in seditious conspiracy, which means conspiring to overthrow the government of the United States.
Liar.
The people of Washington are now apparently being forced to pay the price for stepping out of line and simply demanding equal rights. The majority wants to teach them a lesson for talking about statehood and opposing insurrection. And they want to turn the clock back on DC's home rule power and relive the glory days when Washington was run like a colony by some racist Dixiecrats out of the House District Committee.
Morning, Ramen. Listen to this here, you lying sack of shit. Listen. The Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. And the reasoning mattered. And Madison wrote about it in the Federalist Papers as to why Washington, D.C. should be independent of any state, not part of a state. It was also limited to 10 square miles. Limited. Didn't say it had to have 10 square miles. It was limited to 10 square miles. You seem to forget that. They could very easily cede land back to the states from which they originally came. And therefore, that would solve these problems that you say that there is. I know I won't be repeating myself throughout this.
Yes, that was my party in power then, and it was wrong then, and it's wrong now. Today, it's the GOP that's determined to put the people of Washington in their place. And make no mistake, it's not just these two laws that showed up today without any hearing at all, without any analysis by the committee. They will be attacking Washington not just for its local voting rights policies and criminal justice code, but for its gun safety.
The voting rights policy. The voting rights policy that DC wants to put into effect would allow illegals and non-citizens to vote. Or non-citizens and illegals. Geez, I wonder why the Republicans would say no to that. Why would Republicans say no? Why would anybody of good conscience say no to allowing illegals, people who broke our laws coming to this country, and people who are not eligible to vote because they are not citizens of this country, but they're citizens of Russia and China and Cuba? Yeah. Come on. You want to let Russian citizens vote? You want to let Chinese, North Korean citizens vote, Raskin? I sure as hell don't. And I definitely don't want them voting in Washington, D.C.
Policies, its defense of abortion rights and LGBTQ rights, its decriminalization of marijuana, and dozens of other issues potentially headed to the House floor if we really want to go down this road of becoming the super DC City Council.
And by design, you are. By design, per the Constitution, you are. The Washington, D.C. follows under your responsibility as a member of the House.
My friend Chairman Comer mentioned carjacking and complains of the DC Council's revision of the local criminal justice code. But if we're going to get into the details, let's see how that works. Well, armed carjacking in Washington, D.C., under the legislation we would be repealing today, would get you a sentence of up to 24 years. In Arizona, the most you could get would be 10 years. In Georgia, the most you could get would be 20 years. In Kansas, which has no carjacking statute, you could get 20 years, 20.5 years for armed robbery. In Kentucky, There's no carjacking statute at all, but first-degree armed robbery, which would get you a max of 20 years, 4 years less than you could get in the District of Columbia under the offense that the chairman just cited. Do we really want to sit as a super state legislature micromanaging the laws of this jurisdiction?
You've got no choice. It's in the Constitution. That's your job. I know you guys want to go there. I know you want to go to Washington, D.C., gather your fat ass paycheck, get all the benefits, the private jets, the honorifics and the parties and all this other good stuff, not do your job. I understand that. I understand. I mean, it would be great if I could sit at home and get $175,000 a year and not have to do a job. Man, that's it. I would love that, especially at my age. Okay, I'd love to be able to sit at home, get $175,000 a year, and not do my job. But you were voted to go into that job. If you do not want to follow the Constitution and do your job as outlined in the Constitution, don't run for that office, because you asked for that job. You asked people to put you in that job. You ran and spent your money and other people's money to get that job. And part of your job is to oversee the District of Columbia, not the state of Columbia, the District of Columbia. Hey, Green Badger, how you doing? This was the video that had me yelping this morning. The wife told me to shut off the computer because of this video. Five o'clock in the morning. I was yelling at, or about 5:15, I was yelling at the computer.
It just makes no sense to enter into a policy analysis of the district's particular laws any more than it would make sense for us to do that to Kentucky or Massachusetts or.
Yes, it does make sense because the Constitution says you have to. It's your responsibility.
Oklahoma. Is this really how we want to be spending our time?
Yes.
2016, 86% of residents of this city voted for statehood, and wherever these people stand on particular policy issues, I can assure you that by an overwhelming margin, they want Congress to stop trying to control them and micromanage their affairs. And I believe.
Then move out of D.C. and into a state. Move out of D.C. and move into Virginia. Move into Maryland. Move.
Believe, although the mayor does indeed side with you on the substance of the particular laws, she has said she does not believe Congress should intervene to overthrow the local will of the people of Washington, D.C., as expressed through their local government. The D.C. population is larger than that of 2 states. It pays more federal taxes per capita than the people of any state.
And you know why? You know why all those people, all those rich people live in Washington, D.C.? Because it's the seat of power for the government. It's the seat of power for the United States. That's why all those rich people live there. There is no consumer products manufactured in the state or in the District of Columbia. There's no manufacturing in the District of Columbia. There's no shipyards in the District of Columbia. Why do people, very rich people, live in District of Columbia? To be able to bribe people like you, people who were elected and sent there, to be able to rub shoulders with people like you and get their will done through people like you. That's why there's so many rich people living in the District of Columbia. Oh, Monkey just went live, people. So anybody that wants to jump over and watch Monkey, go for it. You won't hurt my heart. You won't hurt my soul. Just come back and Listen to me later, do my rant. Okay? You're right. You're exactly right, Duck Dog. You're exactly right. It's supposed to be the seat of government and federal government offices.
And they pay more in hard dollars than the people of 23 states. And you might look to see exactly where your state fits on that. The DC has a gross domestic product larger than the GDP of 17 states. Its bond rating is higher than that of 32 states. So the majority today seeks to use an arcane procedure that's only been used 3 times since DC got home rule back in 1973. The last of these
And that was a mistake in giving DC home rule. That was a mistake. People said in 1973 that it would lead to people wanting statehood then. That was a stepping stone. Well, look where we're at now.
resolutions was over 3 decades.
It took them less than 20 years to go from just wanting home rule to wanting statehood.
Decades ago, when Congress disapproved a DC law related to building height restrictions. The final point I want to make is that there is a powerful logic to the dynamics of statehood in American history. We were designed as a constitutional republic on democratic principles. And when the Northwest Ordinance was adopted, Thomas Jefferson was very clear that no community of free citizens was to be controlled and lorded over by other people's representatives in the federal government. Everyone would be on the eventual path to statehood, self-government, and political equality and freedom. That's
except for Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia, because it was carved out and said this is to be the seat of government and not beholden to any one state.
That's why 37 of 50 states, nearly 75%, came into the Union after the original 13. Despite every manner of objection, opponents said that this state was too big or too small. It was a foreign republic like Texas, or it was formerly part of another state like West Virginia or Vermont or Kentucky or Tennessee and many others. They were too Catholic, they were too Mormon, they were too immigrant, they were too racist, they were too far away, they were not contiguous, they were too poor, they were too rich. In every case, the logic of political equality, freedom, and democratic self-government has prevailed over partisan sniping and griping.
Because there is an outline in the Constitution for adding new states. Just as there is an outline in the Constitution specifically saying that the seat of Washington, D.C. would not be a state. It would be separate from a state. Raskin, have you actually read the Constitution? Have you actually sat down and read it? Huh? I mean, granted, it's been a couple of months since I've sat down and read the Constitution from start to finish and all through all 27 amendments. It's been a few months since I've done it. And I actually had to spend a little bit of time reading it this morning because I knew it was in Article 1. I just didn't know which section it was in.
Like that. And I would say for their patriotism and their contributions to America, we owe the people of Washington, D.C. a lot more than our contempt and derision. We owe them statehood. But
bullshit. If they want statehood, move into a state. Move out of the district. But no, they're not going to move out of the district because they want that. I live in the where the federal government sits. They want that little bit of an ego boost that they get for that.
They certainly don't deserve more political tyranny and gratuitous insult while they wait for Congress to do the right thing. I hope everyone believes in the democratic principles of our Constitution and will join me in rejecting this radical attempt to interfere with DC's duly enacted laws. I thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, that was the self-rule, 1973. I remember that. And like I said, 1991 was one of the first times, if I remember correctly, uh, that there was a vote on making on, and it was a subcommittee vote on making DC a state. You're not wrong about that either, Duck Dog. That'll probably one of the few times you'll ever see. Oh, rants are not as much fun reheated. Oh, I get tired and do the Democrats ever actually, and a bunch of Republicans too, but it's the Democrats who push for DC statehood. Now, if you look back on the statehood issue, states have always usually had not always, but have usually been brought in two at a time, so that there would be a balance or a possibility of a balance and not an imbalance one way or the other as a political power grab. Those bribing assets can pay off Congress to keep the Jones Act alive. They'll certainly pay them off to fix. Yeah, but in the force, okay, Data, I'm confused. Which force are you talking about here? Okay. All right. Now, I am going to link here. All right. There's well, if you look up Federalist number 43 by James Madison. All right. This is what James Madison had to say. You heard old Raskin there make his references. Well, here's what James Madison had to say about it. To exercise exclusive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such a district not exceeding 10 square miles as made by cession of particular states and the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state shall be for the erection of forest and other needful things. All right, that is the constitutional verbiage. The indispensable necessity of a complete authority at the seat of government carries its own evidence with it. It is a power exercised by every legislature of the Union, I might say of the world, by virtue of its general supremacy. Without it, not only the public authority might be insulted and its proceedings interrupted with impunity, but a dependence of the members of the general government upon a state comprehending the seat of the government for protection in the exercise of their duty might bring on the national councils imputation of all or influence equally dishonorable to the government and dissatisfactory to the other members of the Confederacy. This consideration has more weight as the gradual accumulation of public improvements at the stationary residence of the government would be both too great a public pledge to be left in the hands of a single state and would create so many obstacles to a removal of the government as still further to abridge its necessary independence. The upkeep of the White House alone, just the White House, is almost $1 billion a year. Or is that, I'm sorry, maybe trillion. Okay. $1 trillion a year. The upkeep of the Capitol is another trillion. Could you imagine Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, any one state trying to pay for that upkeep. Because that's what would be required if the DC, if the capital was a state, if DC became a state. And then to have a state sit there and tell every other state, I need your money to upkeep my state. I need your money to upkeep my roads. All you states out there, give me money to upkeep my property because I'm the capital state. It's bad enough we do it as a district. But could you imagine the uproar? Remember, sovereign states. We're not, each state is supposed to be independent. There's imbalance in the, oh yeah. Okay, that's where I thought you was going, Data, but I wasn't exactly certain. All right, let's see here. What is the billion? You're right, it can't be trillion, it's a billion. Okay. Upkeep cost of White House. Okay, the annual cost of maintenance is $1.6 million. Okay, it's not as much as I thought it was. Okay, the annual cost of maintenance for the White House is 1.6 million. Okay, upkeep cost of Capitol building, DC. Well, we know it's more than $30 million. So, yeah, you're right, Data. I was misspeaking absolutely horribly. The annual expense of running the White House just under 13 million. All right. Yeah, I was looking at just the upkeep, painting, and general maintenance. Okay, but yeah, I didn't think about all the other stuff. Good point. Good point, Data. Good point. Thank you for keeping me keeping me honest here, and reminding me not to speak off the cuff without doing my research first. A lesson I should have learned years ago. But to have, okay, Madison goes on to write, the extent of the federal district is sufficiently circumscribed to satisfy every jealousy of an opposite nature, as it would be appropriate to use this to consent to the state ceding it, as the state would no doubt provided in the compact for the rights and consent of the citizens inhabiting it, as the inhabitants will find sufficient inducements of interest to become willing parties to the cession, as they will have their voice in the election of their government, which exerts authority over them as the municipal legislature for local purposes derived of their own suffrages. And of course, be allowed them as authority of the legislature of the state and the inhabitants of the ceded part to concur in this session. The mere fact, the idea that Raskin and the Democrats are pushing so hard to do this, they ought to be telling you something. This isn't and to use And actually, I'm going to say the Congress has been under both Republican and Democratic control. If since 1973, they have only stepped in 3 or 4 times to overturn uh, acts of the self-governing board of DC under the mayor and such. That shows remarkable restraint. But they're stepping in now because DC wants to give, and let's remember this, DC wants to give illegals and non-citizens the right to vote in their local elections. That is what this is boiling down to. That's why the Republicans are stepping in and saying not only no, but hell no. Because they want to give illegals the right to vote in the state and local elections. This DC statehood thing is a smokescreen. It's a huge ass smokescreen for this one issue, allowing illegals and non-citizens to vote in local elections. Everything else is smokescreen. DC statehood, smokescreen. Smokescreen. They know that'll never get through the House and Senate, not for decades to come, because they'll never get a supermajorities in both, and then get a supermajority of the country, of the state legislatures to vote for it. It won't happen. Because they would actually have to redo the Constitution. They have to amend the Constitution for it to happen. All this crap that Raskin's thrown out is a smokescreen. Now, I want to see the Republicans step up and call him on it. I really do. I want to see somebody step up, somebody there in DC step up, somebody whose voice has got a lot more carry than mine does. Why are they allowing Raskin to get away with this? Why are they allowing the Democrats to get away with this smokescreen? Okay. This is the next thing that got me wild up this morning. We're done with smoke screen, that particular smoke screen. Now we're on to the next one. Now, I normally don't do floor speeches. You know, where they can get up there and speak their piece for 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time, where one member gets there. I normally don't get into that too much because that's usually so much hyperbole, it's not funny. But this is a little bit different here this morning because the Democrats are getting pissed off that some conservative groups are doing the same thing that Democrats have done for decades. It's called forum shopping or judge shopping. And what that is you find a national issue and you find a judge that you know is going to rule the way you want the ruling to go. You find somebody in that area who can get away with filing the complaint and have it heard, would have standing. And then you take it through the legal procedures. Now, the Democrats did that 30 times in 2 years to Trump. Democrats did it to Reagan. Notably, they always go to somebody in Hawaii or California. Oh yeah, I usually like it too when they get butt hurt. Yeah, well, Data, I'm serious here. I appreciate you fact checking me like that. I really do because I let my mouth override my ass, and I didn't do my proper research on that. I was flying off the cuff. So I do appreciate you on that. That's one of the things I like about having Dar on when he's there because he calls me on my nonsense quite often when I get there. Every now and again, I need rain back in. Um, but yeah, the Democrats loved it when okay, here's this article here I dug up this morning, just so that I'm not being hyperbolic. Federal district judge have blocked Trump actions 30 times. This article was written in 2019. He'd been in office 2 years, not 3 years. He'd been in office 3 years. 16, so 17, 18, 19, right. He uh no, he'd only been in office for 2 years. I'm sorry, I was right the first time. He's sworn in 2017. So federal district judges have blocked on the national scale. And a lot of these judges come out of Hawaii and California. Very liberal judges appointed by Democrats. Just like Democrats, if they want to find a district attorney, they go to Fulton County District Attorney, who is a Democrat, and say, we want to bring charges against Trump for Georgia. We're going to pick Fulton County because that's a Democrat whose father was a radical. Or we find a Judge David O. Carter, who was appointed by Bill Clinton to interview. So we have a headline: Federal judge finds Trump's most likely committed crimes over 2020 election. Okay. So yeah, you find, and both parties do it. They find judges, they find district attorneys who are the same political persuasion to do things, to get things done. And there's been attempts by both parties, and usually stopped by the other party, to stop forum shopping, to make it illegal for you to go judge shopping to get things done. Well, what's got them upset right now, what's got the Democrats upset, is there's a judge in Texas that is very pro-life, very anti-abortion. And he's getting ready to have a ruling on an abortion pill that may or may not have medical side effects. I'm not getting into that portion of it. All right. that's getting down into, I'm not going to sit here and argue about that particular thing. What I'm talking about here is a very common practice by both parties to go judge shopping. Well, as is the Democrats' want.
This is the so-called Alliance for Hippocratic.
Up.
President, on the first floor of the federal building in Amarillo, across the street from a grassy park and a few blocks away from the local minor league baseball stadium, is the United States District Courtroom for the Northern District of Texas. Presiding over that courtroom is a lifelong right-wing activist, a partisan.
All right, so we've already started off here with the nastiness. Right wing, activist, partisan. You know, the labels are being thrown out now. The ad hominem attacks. You know, throwing out those negative labels so that you already hate this guy before you know anything else.
An ideologue, an anti-abortion zealot, who was handpicked by Donald Trump and the Federalist Society to pretend to be impartial on the bench.
Okay, and how many times have we listened here since Biden has been in office for his nominees to get up there and swear that they are going to be impartial on the bench, despite their past rulings, despite their past legal arguments, despite well, yeah, I know I've donated to Democrats my entire life, but I promise I will give Republicans a fair shake. Yeah, I know I have called these people every name in the book in the past, but if they come before me in court, I'll give them a fair shake. And you know they're lying. You know they're lying right there. So again, this is nothing new. Hey, Dick Sneezies. Well, good morning to you, and welcome to the morning rant. Because I'm full of it this morning. So it's not just, I mean, when a president nominates people for judgeships, they're going to nominate people that they like, people that believe as they do. Remember, that's how we got. I mean, do you honestly think we'd have Kagan or Sotomayor sitting on the spread? Or, my God, this last woman that couldn't, this last individual who couldn't couldn't give a definition or describe what a woman was because she's not a biology major. Yeah, Brown. Nah, I drank enough coffee yesterday, Duck Dog, that I don't need any Dulcolax today. I drank, let's see, 128 ounces of coffee yesterday. And that took care of any problems I may have had. So, yeah, I mean, judges point people who philosophically agree with them. Presidents appoint people as judges who philosophically agree with them. That's the way it's always been.
And instead, what he's doing is delivering favorable rulings on the cases his fellow right-wing ideologues funnel his way. His name is Judge Matthew Kacsmaryk. He was confirmed in 2019 on a party line vote. In a matter of days, he's going to issue a ruling on a case so absurd and so meritless that it doesn't deserve a single breath of argument.
You know, I could say that about several cases Democrats have brought in. You know, when Democrats brought up a case, you know, filed against Trump, when Trump said that he wanted to take 6 countries, same 6 countries that Obama had done, and extraordinarily vet there anybody coming from those countries. But the Democrats didn't like that. You remember the great Muslim ban? Democrats, the media didn't like that. Okay. Now, and they tried their, so they went judge shopping to find a judge to overturn that. Remember?
In his courtroom. The case is the so-called Alliance for Hippocratic Medicine versus U.S. Food and Drug Administration. If we allow it, Kacsmaryk's ruling could deal the next devastating blow.
You can't stop it. Sad to say, you can't stop it.
The right to privacy in America and the right of all women.
No, it's not a right to privacy. It's a right to murder a baby.
Across the country to control their own bodies. Mr. President.
It's not their body they're controlling, it's another person's body.
Not just in Texas, all 50 states, every single one.
And when he makes his ruling, you can file an appeal and it can work its way up through the judicial system. I'm sure you will judge shop an appeals judge to get it before, who will stay his ruling, and life will go on as normal until it gets heard in the appeals court.
So this afternoon, I'm going to describe this dangerous new political scheme playing out in the courtroom. And Mr. President, I call this scheme court washing. And I'm going to talk about what the President and the Food and Drug Administration must do.
A new name for an old game. Forum shopping or judge shopping.
When this judge's ruling comes down. The lawsuit in Texas aims to undo the Food and Drug Administration's 2000 approval of a medication called mifepristone, one of the 2 drugs that's used in a medication abortion. The drug has a record of being very safe and effective. It's used in more than 50% of abortions nationwide. It's been on.
All right. This is where I'm going to stop this. I'm not going to listen to the rest of this 22 minutes. The point I'm bringing up on this is all of a sudden Democrats don't like judge shopping. They don't like forum shopping. This is something that has gone on for years. Judges, or the Democrats, have always gone to Democrat-appointed judges that lean the way they wanted to lean. Republicans, conservative groups have always gone and tried to find judges that lean the way they want them to lean. It's nothing new. One of these days, and again, I've said this here multiple times, the Democratic Party, these politicians, both parties, but usually more so the Democratic Party, they look for the most part for the short-term win. What is going to give me my win today? Harry Reid did that when he pulled out the nuclear option, and instead of having supermajority votes on judgeships, brought it down to a single majority vote, simple majority. Even though the Republicans told him that if you do this, Supreme Court will be next on the line. But he didn't believe them. And then when the Republicans got control of the Senate, what was one of the first things they did? Supreme Court, simple majority. That's why the Democrats brag about right now they have appointed more judges than Trump has. Trump did. That was their goal. Their goal was to get more judges ran through than Trump did, so they'd have more judges that they could go and take their cases through. It's gamemanship. It's gamemanship that both sides take advantage of. But you never hear the media run out there, oh, the Democrats are judge shopping. They went to find a judge that they knew would rule in their case. How evil this is. Look how unfair the Democrats are being. They went and found a judge appointed by Obama to make sure they got their way. No, you don't. But you look up this article on this guy in this particular case, and let's see here. I've got the article. I've got an article right here in front of me. Get that out of my way. Thank you much. The headline: A devout Christian, Matthew, has been shaped by his deep anti-abortion beliefs. This here's a Washington Post article. Let me see if I can get this shared. I'm not going to read the article. I'm just going to show you how the headlines read it. Politics. Texas judge who could take down the abortion pill. Devout Christian has been shaped by his deep anti-abortion beliefs. First thing they do is show a picture of him holding his nephew in his arms. All right. They talk about, the judge nominated by President Trump and confirmed in 2019. So, I mean, they're leading off with that evil, red orange man bad appointed this guy. All right. Then they have this following article here. Trump's lasting legacy on the judiciary is not just at the Supreme Court level. Orange man bad all over judiciary. Okay. While many experts have said the case relies on baseless medical claims, it is I'm not going to try to pronounce his name, Rolls presiding judge that has the abortion rights movement bracing for another crippling defeat. All right, then it just goes on to about how this guy is, an evil person because he's a Christian. He's He's this, he's that, he come from this group. Now, Duck Dog, I don't know that much about this drug. I really don't. That's why I'm not getting involved into the discussion about the drug or the case itself. It's how the Democrats are suddenly standing up. 3 years ago, they were all for forum shopping. When Trump was in office, they were all for forum shopping. They were all for going judge shopping. They liked doing it. They liked going to their judges in California and Hawaii to get rulings that affect nationwide. But now all of a sudden, oops, we hate it. So we got to stop it. But they took full advantage of it when Trump was in office. They took full advantage of it when either one of the Bushes were in office. They took full advantage of it when Reagan was in office. Then they decried its use. Now they decry its use when Obama was president. They decried its use when Clinton was president. They had the chance for 2 years. They had their chance. They had full control of the federal government. They had a chance then to make judge shopping illegal, and they didn't do it. Why didn't they do it when they had the chance? Because they loved being able to do it. And they know it's not going to go anywhere now. Again, this here is rile the people up, rile up everyone, make people angry. Throw out Trump's name. Yeah, it is different when they do it. It's totally different when they do it. But just because they did it, that doesn't mean that it's only good when they do it, when it achieves their ends. Because remember, the Democrats are the good people. They're the wise ones. And everybody who disagrees with them is evil. I've said this before, I'll say it again, I'll say it again today, and I'll probably say it again tomorrow, and probably say it again next week and next month, and for the next several years, as long as I draw breath and can talk. The Democratic Party is all for inclusion as long as you agree with them. They're all for diversity as long as you agree with them. They're all for people having the right to speak their mind as long as you agree with them. They speak out of one side of their mouth. The Democratic Party is the most hypocritical, and I'm not saying again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the Republican Party is perfect. My God, they're not. I just got a hell of a lot less problems with a lot of things Republicans do. So, like I said, today's stream is going to be a shorter stream because I have got some serious business I got to take care of today. This here's my next article that I wanted to cover. That It's amazing. I found this as part of a rabbit hole yesterday. And this just sort of pissed me off. Virginia school official taking heat for saying the Battle of Iwo Jima set the record for human evil. Okay. Abrar Omish, I'm taking a wild guess, is her name. Oh boy, isn't this wonderful? Fairfax County School Board. A controversial Virginia school board member is taking heat for saying the Battle of Iwo Jima, a major U.S. victory during World War II, unfortunately happened and set a record for human evil. Let's listen to what she has to say.
There's also a lot of history in February. A number of community members reached out to me just a few days ago. Was Japanese Day of Remembrance, something for us to certainly reflect on as we learn our history and think about it. The days when Iwo Jima unfortunately happened and set a record for really what I hate to say human evil is capable of. And so that's something just to remember, especially actually in advance of Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is coming up, and just so many moments for us to think about what human beings are capable of and how we can turn the tide and turn the trajectory to make sure that we're building better for the next generation.
Omish invoked something for us to certainly reflect on as we learn our history and think about it, she said. The days of, Iwo Jima unfortunately happened and set a record for really what I hate to say human evil is capable of. Human evil. The United States soldiers were the human evil that she's speaking of. Okay? That is what she's talking about. This was, as the article states here, made the stunning statements during a Thursday meeting of the Fairfax County School Board while discussing the U.S. recent Japanese Day of Remembrance, which commemorates the 1942 internment of Japanese Americans. Now, the internment of Japanese Americans, that was, upon reflection and looking in the past, 2020 hindsight and all that other good stuff, was not necessarily a good thing. Probably should not have happened. But it did. Unfortunately. And if she would have condemned just the internment, none of this would be being said. But then she had to turn around and extend it to the battle for Iwo Jima. And just so that I don't get called out again, and what's widely considered the bloodiest fight in World War II, 7,000 Marines died, 20,000 were wounded, and nearly 18,000 Japanese were killed. Okay. And that, remember, the Japanese attacked the United States. There would not have been a battle of Iwo Jima if the Japanese hadn't attacked Pearl Harbor. But it was the Americans that she says were the evil ones. Now, she did try to walk it back. Let's see if I can find. They quoted her. They did try to walk it back some by saying that she made a misstatement. Okay, that she wasn't very articulate in what she said. Oh yeah, let's not talk about Mao or Pol Pot. I don't get a chance to watch AP, Neil. Um, you're you're right, Dick. Um, there's plenty of evidence to show that. Um, th- I don't have time today to get into that particular barrel of worms. One, because I know enough about that particular subject to say, yeah, I've heard that before, but I've never dug deep into that monkey barrel. Okay. Um, there's a lot of conspiracy, a lot of stuff said about the beginning of World War II. Morning, CK. Oh, and you've got hail falling? I hope all your car vehicles are undercover where you got no damage to them. I've seen hail the size of golf balls and softballs, and they will just. Now, if you want a good car, if you're willing to buy a car with dings, but brand new car, go out to a car lot the day after a hailstorm, and you'll find dealerships trying to sell these cars with dents and dings in them, and get some discounts that way. Oh, mm-mm-mm. My blood boils enough. There, there's just not enough time in the day for me to. Since I've taken on the duties of chief cook and bottle washer here at the house, uh, like I find that takes up a lot more of my time. Yeah, they'll literally take thousands off the prices. Ah, okay. That back massage would hurt. That's more of that deep massage that hurts a little bit on the painful side. Used car lots will take them off also, Dick. At least I've seen used car lots take them off too because they know nobody, people don't want cars with a lot of dents in them. Uh, Not all of them. Yep, you're right about that too. How the thing about this woman that sort of irritated me though, how do these people like her get on elected to office. These people hate America. That's all there is to it. And yet they don't hide it. They don't hide it. They don't hide their hatred for the United States. They don't hide their hatred for this country. And yet they get elected. And I just don't understand how it happens. I just don't. We are sowing the seeds of our own destruction with putting people like this in office. Because this woman, she's only 28 years old, if I remember correctly, one of the youngest elected officials in Fairfax County when I read her biography. And, she'll run for city, she's on a school board now. She'll run for city government and then for state government. And then she'll, be trying to get up in the House of Representatives. We've seen it before. And if you vote against her, then you're automatically a racist because, well, she dresses different than the rest of us. Or you're you don't like her because of her religious beliefs. So prove you're a good person by voting for this woman who hates America. Anyway. All right, we're coming up on an hour and a half. I've got to get going. I got to get downtown here in 35 minutes. Everybody, have a good day. Enjoy yourselves. We really do need to start taking a closer look at who we elect to office. We really do. The hard thing about those, if only one side is looking hard and the other side is voting just because of the D behind their name, we're still getting these people in office. And all we can do is try to expose their anti-Americanism, their hatred for the country. So jump over to Monkey Stream. He's streaming now. Y'all have a good day.